All right, so as we begin this video, we're going to start off with a little contest. Now, when I go to my mother-in-law's for the family dinner, we always do this game where she puts a bunch of candy in a jar and then we have to guess how much is in it. Now, my mother-in-law is very tricky and I usually fail at this pretty bad. All right, so here is the game. So in the book of Job, there is a lot of questions, okay? And so this is the first part of the game. How many questions are asked in the book of Job, all right? Second part of the contest is how much candy is in this jar. So here's how this is going to work. By Friday, you have to give me the exact answer to how many questions are in the book of Job, and then whoever gets that plus closest to counting the pieces of candy in this jar.
The Candy Man. The Candy Man can.
You win the candy. Now, unfortunately, you don't get the jar. I took this from the church kitchen, so it has to be returned or I might get in trouble, all right? So there's the contest. Now, I bring this up for this reason. There are a lot of questions in this book of Job, but there are two main questions that we have to wrestle with if we're to understand what the author is getting at. So the two questions are this: will Job love God for who God is, or because of the blessings that Job has received? And then the second question is, will Job trust God even though he doesn't understand all the reasons that he is suffering? And we can turn those questions around on ourselves. Why do we love God? Is it because of what we received? If some of those things are taken from us, does our love for God, is it lowered? Also, do we trust God even when we don't understand all the different reasons that maybe we're going through some difficult and hard times? Now, when we read through the Bible, we're given answers at different books of why we suffer. We're not always given all the answers, but you take the book of James, for example. It says that we go through testing and trials to grow and mature our faith. At different parts of the Bible, we read that because of our sin, there's consequences. And so this is why we may face some suffering. But that is not the main intent of the author of Job. Again, it goes back to those two main questions. Will we love God and will we trust God? Because if we're going to the book of Job, trying to find all the different reasons that a person may suffer, we're going to leave this book not satisfied. All right, now for me personally, I've struggled at times reading through the book of Job for different reasons. One, it's a very long book. Also, there's a lot of dialogue that happens in this book. So I want to lay out some things that have helped me in the reading and hopefully will help you as well. So first of all is this: just understand the outline of the book. So if you have a study Bible, I would encourage you to look at the outline. And basically it flows like this. There's a prologue, and we started this last week, this introduction to the book of Job. And this is where we get that behind the scenes look of the conversation with God and Satan and why Job is selected to go through all this suffering. And then basically there is this dialogue between Job and his three friends, and this happens in 3 cycles. And then this one guy, this younger guy, he shows up. His name is Elihu, and he talks a little bit. And then God shows up and he reveals himself to Job and the friends. And then the book ends with the epilogue, the ending of how Job is restored. And so that outline is helpful as you're working through this. Now, another thing I found helpful as well is this, and most of your Bibles probably have this, is headings with the chapter. Again, there's a lot of conversation going, and if you're not careful, who's talking? Is it Job? Is it one of his friends? And so I would encourage you as you begin each chapter to look at that heading of who is speaking. Now, to summarize this conversation with Job and his 3 friends, because again, it's long and it kind of goes on and on, but we can summarize it in this way. The friends are making the argument that God is sovereign and God is just, which is absolutely correct. God is sovereign and just. But they go on to say, because God is sovereign and just, it must be that Job sinned in some major way that he is going through all this suffering. Okay, so again, they are saying God is sovereign, just. Job did something wrong. He sinned in a great way, and that is why he is facing all this consequence of all this suffering. But Job keeps replying to them, no, I've not done anything to deserve this. Now, Job, he says he's a man of integrity. You know, he sinned. He knows that. But what he is getting at is he has this integrity. He's not lived in such a way where he's done all these major sins and then to have to face the consequence of his kids being killed, of all his possessions being gone. So this goes on and on. Now, what is interesting is this, and something that we have to wrestle with, is that the reason that Job was selected to go through this suffering is because he is righteous. I mean, that's kind of hard to think through. Because Job is so righteous, because he is a man of integrity, this is why the Lord allows him to go through all this suffering. Now, another thing that we need to note with both Job and the friends is that what they say is a mixture of truth and what is false. Okay, so we need to be careful of this. If we're going to quote Job, we need to kind of understand it in the context, because what Job says, what the friends say, some of it, again, is very true, but it's mixed in with some false kind of conclusions. And so you need to be careful as you go through that. Now, what I love about the book of Job, as we look to those questions of will Job love and trust God, as the book ends, he does. He accuses God, he wrestles with God, he at times gets angry with God, but when all is said and done, God reveals his character to Job. Job repents, he continues to love the Lord, and his trust is renewed. Now, what I love is this. When we think about this story, we see that God reveals his character to Job, and this was enough for Job to continue to love and trust the Lord. But we have a much clearer picture, because Job did not have the entire Bible like we have. Most think that the story happened around the time of the patriarchs, so Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. So a very early story. Well, we now have the Bible, and we know God's character. And we see this most clearly in the person of Jesus Christ. That Jesus came to this earth, and he suffered, and he died on the cross for us, and he rose again. And so when we go through those difficult and hard times, we can look to God's character, that he sent his son, and that actually God became flesh in the person of Jesus Christ. And we can have confidence and hope that he loves us, and that we can continue to trust him, even if we go through suffering, and even if we don't understand all the reasons that we are facing these hardships. And so I hope that gives you confidence as we go through this book, as we wrestle with facing suffering in this life.